Saunders Landscaping WHMIS Site-Specific Training. Prior to watching this video, you must have been trained in the fundamentals of WHMIS. For more information, please refer to the information included with the quiz. It is important to remember that this training is not only to prepare you for working with, but also for working around hazardous products. Working with hazardous products includes storing, handling, using, and disposing. This also includes a worker supervising another worker who is completing one of these activities. Working around a hazardous product can occur on occasion on our projects. For example, a masonry trade spraying brick cleaning solvent on the exterior of a building while we are working on the landscaping. This would be classified as working around the hazardous product, and depending on the following conditions identified from the hazard assessment, we might require training on the cleaning solvent: the quantity of the product, the form of the product, the level of exposure, the schedule of work activities, and the persistence of product after use. It is important to maintain open communication with the other trades to inform them and to be informed when we are working with and working around hazardous products so that proper protective measures can be put into place. As per WHMIS, supervisor and management WHMIS responsibilities are as follows. Assess work sites and identify existing and potential hazards before work begins. Advise every worker of all known or reasonably foreseeable hazards in the area. Establish procedures to minimize worker exposure. Ensure all labels are in place and all SDSs are current. Ensure workers are adequately trained to protect their health and safety. This includes workers are trained on all content of all labels and SDSs. Train workers on the procedures for safely storing, using, and handling hazardous products. Train workers on emergency procedures involving hazardous products. Ensure SDSs are readily available to all workers who may be exposed to a hazardous product and to the HSC. As per WHMIS, worker WHMIS responsibilities are as follows. Report to supervisor or management if there is inadequate information about a hazardous product. Participate and apply training on hazardous products. Only perform work if competent to do so or under direct supervision. Wear all required PPE. Refuse to work if there are dangerous conditions. Read, understand, and follow all safe work practices and safe job procedures for spill release procedures and emergency procedures. Know how to access SDSs. To be site-specific trained in the eyes of WHMIS, workers must be able to answer the following 4 questions. 1. What are the hazards? 2. How should I protect myself? 3. What should I do if there is an incident? And 4. How do I get more information? This video will provide the basic site-specific instructions on Weldon P70 low VOC primer for PVC and CPVC plastic pipe. We will refer to it as P70. We use P70 when we are installing irrigation systems. This video is a guideline for how to read and understand the SDS forms for the other WHMIS products we work with and around. In the following slides, we review where to find the information on the SDS sheet so that you have the tools to answer the 4 WHMIS site-specific questions. What are the hazards? Hazard identification. There are hazard groups, classes, and categories to classify hazardous products. These are listed in Section 2 on the SDS. Hazard groups and classes. This includes things like physical hazards, think of this as how a product behaves, and health hazards, which is how a product hurts. Hazard categories. Each hazard class has at least one hazard category. There's a ranking system used to identify the degree of a hazard from 1, which is high, to 5, meaning low. And in some instances, there are also subcategories that use letters. P70 has 3 hazard groups: health, environmental, and physical. Under health, you can see acute oral toxicity is classified as category 4, which is a lower ranking hazard. And under physical, flammable liquid is classified as a category 2, which is a high hazard. Pictograms. Pictograms are used under WHMIS to visually display hazards. They are standardized under the globally harmonized system of classification and labeling of chemicals, referred to commonly as GHS. For P70, there are 3 pictograms on the SDS sheet. 1. Physical hazard, being a flammable product, and 2. Health hazards, may cause less serious health effects and may cause or be suspected of causing serious health effects. Signal words. There are 2 signal words used in WHMIS to alert workers to the overall hazard level of a product. Danger equals high-level hazards, and warning equals lower-level hazards. On the SDS sheet, refer to the signal word section, and in the case of P70, the product is classified as danger. Hazard statements. Hazard statements are standardized phrases under GHS that describe a product's hazards. There are physical and health statements. On the SDS sheet, refer to Section 2, Hazard Statements. The hazards for P70 include highly flammable liquid and vapor, causes serious eye irritation, harmful if inhaled, may cause respiratory irritation, may cause drowsiness or dizziness, suspected of causing cancer, and may form explosive peroxides. Symptoms of exposure. A key part to understanding the hazards is to know what symptoms to look for when someone is exposed to a product, which can be found in Section 4 of the SDS. For example, with P70, inhalation. Severe overexposure may result in nausea, dizziness, headache, can cause drowsiness, irritation of eyes, and nasal passages. Part 2. How should I protect myself? Let's start off with reviewing precautionary statements. They are standardized phrases under the GHS that help to reduce or prevent exposure to hazardous products. There are 4 types of statements. 1. Prevention. Ways to reduce exposure to a product. They are identified as 200 statements. 2. Storage. Conditions for proper storage. They are identified as 400 statements. 3. Response. Actions for first aid, spills, and fires. They are identified as 300 statements. And 4. Disposal requirements for proper disposal. They are identified as 500 statements. On the P70 SDS, refer to Section 2, Precautionary Statements, and an example of a prevention statement is keep away from heat, sparks, open flames, and hot surfaces. No smoking. An example of storage is store in a well-ventilated place and keep container tightly closed. Routes of exposure. In order to understand how to best protect yourself, it is important to understand the routes of exposure to a product. In Section 4 of the SDS, you can see the likely routes of exposure for P70. The routes are inhalation, eye, and skin contact. Handling and storage. This is covered in Section 7 of the SDS, and it refers to how you should handle and store the product properly to avoid creating hazards and risking exposure. For P70 under handling, an example is avoid breathing of vapor, avoid contact with eyes, skin, and clothing. An example of storage is store in a well-ventilated room or shade below 44 degrees Celsius and away from direct sunlight. Recommended controls and PPE. In Section 8 of the SDS, refer to the precautions to control exposure. It provides information on exposure limits, engineering controls, monitoring, and PPE. For P70, the engineering control is to use local exhaust as needed. An example of required PPE for P70 is eye protection, avoid contact with eyes, wear splash-proof chemical goggles, face shield, safety glasses, spectacles with brow guards and side shields, etc., as may be appropriate for the exposure. Part 3. What should I do if there's an incident? Let's start off with the response and disposal statements. In Section 2, refer to the precautionary statement section. This will provide information for response and disposal. Here are some examples of the statements to look for to pick out the response and disposal statements. Specifically for P70, they provide the following statement. If inhaled, remove victim to fresh air and keep at a rest in a comfortable position for breathing. First aid measures. In Section 4 of the SDS, there's an entire section that explains what to do in the instance of exposure to all applicable methods, the acute symptoms and effects, and the chronic long-term effects. For example, with P70, if it comes into contact with your eyes, you're supposed to flush eyes immediately with plenty of water for 15 minutes and seek medical advice as soon as possible. Firefighting measures. In Section 5, the SDS reviews what to do in the case of a fire by providing information on the suitable extinguishing media, the unsuitable extinguishing media, exposure hazards, combustion products, and protection for firefighters. Specifically for P70, the suitable extinguishing media is dry chemical powder, carbon dioxide gas, foam, halon, or water fog, and the unsuitable extinguishing media is water spray or stream. Accidental release measures. In Section 6 of the SDS, there is information in regards to personal precautions, environmental precautions, methods for cleanup, and materials not to be used for cleanup. For our example of P70, personal precautions include keep away from heat, sparks, and open flame. Methods for cleaning include prevent product or liquids contaminated with product from entering sewers, drains, soil, and open water course. Clean up with sand or other inert absorbent material. Transfer to a closable steel vessel. Materials not to be used for cleanup, aluminum or plastic containers. We have emergency response plans for chemical spills and fire that are reviewed in the employee orientation. Each site will also have site-specific ERPs in place that should be followed in the case of an incident. If an incident occurs, you are to follow the SDS instructions and the site-specific incident plan. Ensure you inform your supervisor as soon as possible of the incident and follow their instructions. Part 4. How do I get more information? Let's start with the worksite and supplier labels. Worksite labels. They are created by workers on a worksite using the supplier label. There are 3 required elements. 1. Product identifier. 2. Precautionary measures. And 3. A reference to the SDS. Supplier labels are created by suppliers, manufacturers, or importers. There are 6 required elements. 1. Product identifier. 2. Hazard pictograms. 3. Signal words. 4. Hazard statements. 5. Precautionary statements. And 6. Supplier identifier. SDS. The SDS provides the detailed information about the hazardous product through 16 sections. SDS books are located in designated company trailers, designated company vehicles, the office, the shop, and online through the Dropbox link. There's an inventory list of the WHMIS products we use in the table of contents in each SDS book. Contact the manufacturer. In Section 1 of the SDS, you will find the contact information for the manufacturer along with emergency and medical contact numbers. For P70, the emergency transportation ChemTel international number is 1-813-248-0585. Other information. In Section 16 at the end of the SDS, there is additional information such as department issuing the datasheet, email address, training requirements, reissue date, and the reason for reissue, and the intended purpose or use of the product. For the example of P70, under training necessary, they stipulate yes, training in practices and procedures contained in product literature. There's also information on WHMIS products in our company safety manual, in the safe work practices, safe job procedures, and job hazard assessments. If you need more information, you can always ask questions to your supervisor, coworkers, and management. Do not use or work around any WHMIS products you have not read the SDS for. If you have any questions, please ensure you get the proper information prior to working with the hazardous product. Please complete the WHMIS quiz. You must receive 80% or higher to be certified as trained. If you have any questions, concerns, or require further information, please contact the office via email at office@saunderslandscaping.ca and by phone at 403-272-5013.